And you are live.
All right, thanks everybody. We'll call the Board of Education business session meeting to order. And Kimberly, can you please take the roll?
Sure. President Richard Lindsay.
Here.
Vice President Carrie Nicholson.
Here.
Secretary Lisa Middleton.
Here.
Treasurer Larry Williams.
Here.
Trustee Matt Davis.
Here.
Trustee Shauna Gamble.
Here.
And Trustee Amanda Lankard.
Here.
All right, thank you. And we'll start with a moment of silence. All right, and Larry, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance
To
to the
To
flag
the
of the United
United States of America
and to the republic
Republic for which it stands,
one
nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
All right, first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. I entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
so moved.
Support.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, and we'll start with a roll call vote. Lankard,
Yes.
Gamble,
Yes.
Davis,
Sorry, dogs are barking. They would have said yes for me.
Williams,
yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Nicholson,
Yes.
and Lindsay, yes. Motion's approved. And number 3, members of the audience may address the board on agenda items only. Do we have any public comment?
We do not.
All right, number 4 is consent agenda, minutes, expenditures, personnel and other. We have approval of minutes, disbursements, employment, 2 employments, and appoint representative for the parent advisory committee. Randy, you want to give us a background on those?
Sure. If you don't mind, I'm just going to go through A, B, and C through D are pretty consistent with what we normally do, although you'll notice that the minutes cover an awful lot of business that was being done by the board. E is the Special Education Parent Advisory Committee, or PAC, is organized by the Calhoun Intermediate School District. Each constituent school district appoints at least 1 member to represent its district and to serve a 3-year term. The representative must be a resident of that district, be a parent of a child with a disability, and be willing to represent the district on the PAC. The board must approve the appointment. Gwen Thomas meets the above criteria and agrees to represent Marshall Public Schools by serving on the Parent Advisory Committee. She is really a treasure to have, and we're glad that she stepped forward to be a part of this important committee. It is a recommendation of the superintendent that the consent agenda be approved as presented.
All right, we have the consent agenda as presented. I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Moved.
Support.
All right, we have a motion and support. Any discussion? All right, we'll start with Shauna,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes, sir.
Larry,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
oh,
Did you-
Carrie, did you vote? Sorry.
No, you didn't say my name, but yes.
Carrie, sorry, I meant
Thank you.
Carrie. Yeah, Richard, yes, and Amanda.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm trying to do this while air fryer's going in the background. The dogs are running around. So. All right, and next on the agenda, number 5 is report of the superintendent. And Randy, can you take us through that?
Sure will. I just want you to know that I didn't think that having dogs and kids in the background would be a good argument with the state to go back to in-person board meetings, but I might bring that up as one of the example.
I keep trying. You tell them I'll sign an affidavit, whatever's needed.
All right, all right. I want to do special recognitions first. Amber Halstead fills the position of third grade teacher at Harrington Elementary. Ms. Halstead attended the Baker College where she earned a bachelor's degree with the major in language arts and a double minor in elementary education and early childhood education. Kelly Ryle fills the position of special education paraprofessional at Hughes Elementary. Ms. Ryle is a graduate of Lakeview High School. Those are the new hires at this point. Second on the special recognition is all of you. I want to read a memo from Dr. Lunger, Superintendent of the ISD, and a resolution by their board regarding board appreciation. And take a moment to thank you for your service. This is local school board, district board of education recognition resolution, January 2021. Whereas the boards of education of the constituent school districts in the Calhoun ISD have renewed their commitment to ensure that all children succeed and failure is not an option. And the board members voluntarily make a personal commitment of countless hours and energy to that goal. And whereas these boards of education understand the need to be creative and adapt to an ever-changing and challenging political, social, regulatory, and economic environment while protecting valuable programs for students. And whereas school boards play an important and vital role in supporting an education system that is the foundation upon which Michigan's economic, social, and intellectual capital and future is built. And whereas board decisions affect the present and future lives of children and set the direction to prepare our students to be competitive around the world, ultimately affecting the lives of 1.47 million Michigan students and more than $14.1 billion in education investment. And whereas these boards of education encourage traditional and non-traditional partnerships among and between local school districts, intermediate school districts, and unique community business and agency organizations that will better assist them in helping to create success for their students. And whereas the individual citizens that are members of these boards of education have a strong commitment to the creation of safe, caring, and enriching learning environments that ensure that our communities are strong and mature and nurturing. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that during January School Board Recognition Month, Calhoun Intermediate School District Board of Education celebrates and commends the commitment, leadership, and the creativity of the individual school boards of education in Calhoun County. This was presented and adopted on January 7th, 2021. Wonderful words to be said in the resolution about your work, your tireless effort, your commitment to this district of Marshall Public Schools, and your service to our young people and families that we see and work with each and every day. We have a small token of appreciation that's going to be mailed out to you, each of you, in the mail tomorrow, so look for it in your mailboxes. We can't do enough to thank you for the work that you do, and your work is incredibly important to this district, so thank you very much for your service. If we were all together, we'd be doing a standing ovation, but that doesn't come across very well in Zoom. Recent COVID impact on schools is my next topic. In your packet, you have the confirmed and probable positives for 2020 to 2021. This was completed as of 1/22/2021 at 1:15 in the afternoon. We have consistently in the final column over there, or the final week column of 117 to 123, it shows a total of 5 students and 3 staff members who have come up confirmed or probable positive. I want you to note that I corrected the student and staff turnaround for the one column in the heading for Amanda last time. I want you to note also I added virtual only students. We had not been reporting this in the trend analysis, but it is important data to take a look at. Virtual only means it's not school associated in person, and they're not doing extra co-curricular activities that engage with our students. So very few times do we see close contacts unless it's family members. Also at the bottom, or the final tally to the far right, is broken down by building, so you can see how many students and staff have come up positive or presumed probable positive all the way down through. And you see the largest numbers at MYCA. That was really for the last cycle. The new cycle began in January. We're going to see how that reporting comes along through Dr. Rhonda Markham and through the MYCA. The other thing I want to mention is that our total as of the 22nd of January is 118 students and 27 staff. That since has changed this week. We've already got 2 additional students without close contacts within the school and 1 additional staff member that's being reported for this coming week. So that's going to be updated and you'll have a copy of that.
So
Another,
Randy,
yes,
I wasn't clear on the Harrington numbers because there was one today, but you said that that wasn't on there yet. So is there actually 5 staff?
there will be 5 staff as of when I put the new column in, which I've already done, but I just didn't send it out to you. It covers the 24th of January through the 30th of January.
So are we, do we have an outbreak at Harrington?
The county has not defined it as such yet, Carrie. It could be very likely that we do. And an outbreak is defined as 2 or more confirmed positive members of the same school community, and it is most likely spread within the school. We don't know for sure yet until they verify the source of that. And so I'm going to wait for the health department to determine that.
Okay.
That's
And-
not our call to make.
Okay. And was Harrington the only one that's been shut down, or was Marshall Opportunity School? Can
No,
you give me
just-
an understanding?
Yeah, no, just Harrington, because of the time period of when this was reported as positive, how long the quarantine period lasted, they were quarantined through yesterday. And today was today's Monday. They were quarantined through today, and tomorrow's the first day there to return in person. The reason why we closed it down is because 1 positive had 11 staff members that were considered close contacts and 6 students were considered close contacts.
Yeah.
So it's really because our staffing was impacted as opposed to necessarily our students.
Well, is there something different we should be doing with our staffing for the fact that Harrington has been closed down twice because of so many close contacts to staff, and that doesn't seem to be an issue with the other schools? Are there issues with the staff not maintaining distance, or, I mean, is it
I
just
think-
bad luck of which staff member was positive, or is there issues
No.
that we need to be addressing to make sure people are safe?
There are some issues that we need to be addressing, and those issues partially are because of staffing. When you have like a paraprofessional or a student teacher hitting multiple classrooms during the day, it's very difficult to maintain cohort. And also the work that they do as teams, and that comes down to practice. So safety practices, like they're all wearing masks. That's not the problem. It's close proximity for an extended period of time, up to 15 minutes or more cumulative for the day. And those separations need to be maintained at a more regular basis. So those are conversations we're going to have with our administrative team.
Okay, because it is something that's affecting the kids at Harrington a lot more than the other schools. I just want, and plus we want to make sure that our staff are safe. And
Absolutely. The other thing I want to share with you tonight, which is really good news, although it's a long time coming, it feels like it's a long time away from today, but we were able to announce across the board within our district for all of our staff and educators that we've been able to secure a schedule for our vaccination clinics at Marshall Public Schools. Danielle Siebert, our district nurse, has been working with the county health department, And we've scheduled Friday, February 26th for the first vaccination and Friday, March 19th for the second vaccination booster clinic. These clinics will be held here in Marshall beginning at 12 noon and going through the afternoon, probably up through 3:30 or 4 o'clock. We're not going to end until everyone that signed up for vaccinations received their vaccination. We expect the clinics to go till 4, not much later. We also know that that's a Friday, and we've scheduled that strategically to make sure that if people feel any after effects from the vaccine, they'll have the weekend to be able to recuperate. The vaccinations will be provided by appointment only. Danielle will announce when she can begin taking those appointments for our staff. She will also disseminate health forms and consent forms ahead of time to expedite the process for vaccinations. All appointments will need to be scheduled but no later than February 24th so that we can communicate with our county health department. And the first clinic again is on the 26th. It's our hope to make Friday the 26th and Friday the 19th of March half days for students and staff to allow all our staff time to attend the clinics in Marshall. First, we thought we were going to do a clinic in Marshall and a clinic in Albion for our buildings over there, but that because of scheduling, because of the need for the county to combine things, they decided that one site in Marshall would be the best they would want to do based on the scheduling to get it all in February. With that, it means we're also going to support Marlee School joining us and Marshall Academy joining us for those vaccinations so that we can support those smaller districts to get in the hunt and get in the scheduling process. It's been an anxious time for our staff waiting to hear this news. I'm sure some folks aren't happy that it's going to be that far out, but it's going to be really helpful for us to get that done. And I'm excited that we have it locked on the books.
Hey, Randy,
Yeah,
can I say something really quick about that?
sure.
Just as a FYI, we had a clinic at our church. One of the things that came up was the vaccinations cannot be refrozen. So it was being suggested that we have like a really quick on-call sort of wait list to make sure that those vaccinations can be used once they're, just in case something comes up. So that was all.
Yeah, so let me, we've addressed that, Shauna, and I've actually coined the phrase "no shot left behind" to make sure that when we have those situations and we have additional dosages that can't be used, that we do have a call list. The on-call list is going to be managed by the health department. We have to do by appointment, so we have to make sure that all of our staff that want one, including any volunteers that have been identified that are working routinely with our kids this year, those folks will be on the list. They'll be scheduled into appointments. Other than that, the on-call is going to be managed by the health department so that they can actually bring people in that are on the other priority lists, like perhaps 65 and older that still haven't got their vaccination yet in the area. We're going to let them manage that, but we're going to definitely be ready to get folks in when they need to get in. Like I said, everything else should be managed by appointment. And Danielle will do a good job of making sure that any staff that have not responded and said that they want to have a vaccine, they have an opportunity to at least get on the list before we get to the 26th of February. So that is good news. The next one, report of the superintendent's leadership team reports. In your packet, you have a pretty robust report from each of the building principals and directors about their operations. Probably an awful lot offered there for you to understand a little bit more about athletics and how it's impacting us between the DHHS and MHSAA. I'm just going to open it up for any questions. I do want to make an observation to start with. If you read each of the elementary buildings reports, you're going to see that there's an influx of students coming in from virtual only back to in-person instruction. In case you did the math, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of over 100 students that are asking in second semester to transition back to in-person instruction for elementary. And we're gonna, we've been able to do that while maintaining 6-foot distancing and safety protocols in the buildings. We've added 2 new sections to the elementary to allow that to happen, and we're pretty pleased to see that happen. So does anybody have any comments or questions across the board on these reports?
Dr. Davis, has every student who wanted to return to face-to-face at elementary, is a spot been prepared for them to do so?
Yes, to my knowledge, that's correct. In fact, a couple outliers that came in a little bit late in the process, we were still able to accommodate.
Great.
But we are pretty, right now we're pretty full. Not a lot of flexibility right now unless we had another chance to open a section. But
All right, any other questions?
second
Go ahead.
semester started. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Rich.
No, I was just saying if there's any more questions.
I have a couple actually, and they don't have to be answered tonight, but based on these, I was just wondering, do you have any updates on how the Engage program is going at the middle school to get in touch with those students who are kind of distanced from learning right now? How is that going, or do you know?
Yeah, the Engage system is the state offered system for connecting with students that are not engaged and not connected in our virtual world. And we've had verification last week that all the numbers that we had asked for are actually put in, and they're starting to make those reach out and calls. So I think it's too early to update you, Lisa, but we can certainly have Chad give you an update at the following meeting.
Thank you. I'd like to see how that's going.
Mhm.
Also, do you have any input from the principals to see how the credit recovery exams went for those students who needed to get credit for those classes that they were struggling with? Do we have any data on that, on how it went?
I do not have an update report on that. I can ask Dave and see if we can get a report for you.
Okay. And then I guess my last comment there was, I saw the comment about the virtual band and watched their concert that they put on. That was pretty cool that they were able to do that. And I thought it was really nice that you could actually see every student playing their instrument, where sometimes at a live concert, you can't see the kids who are in the back sitting down. So that was like a nice change. And just maybe to forward it on to Mr. Root, that maybe to do that once every year. And then that can also be sent out to, family, extended family who don't get to attend those concerts, or shut-ins, or nursing homes, like they're doing the Valentines for the nursing home residents. I just thought that would be like a really nice thing to kind of forward on to other people who don't normally get to attend the concert. They did such a nice job with that. So kudos to that.
Maybe that's something they could even share on YouTube and we could push out on our own social media pages as a
Yeah.
repeat. I unfortunately missed it, so now I'm interested in seeing it.
Yeah, we're
Um,
forced to do some of these things virtually, but maybe it's also been a blessing in disguise that we've found new ways to reach more people.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I think it's good. I just wanted to commend you for Randy and staff for that packet from the building principals and your leadership. It was really, really good, really well done. A lot of good information, very helpful to kind of get a pulse of what's going on, from that perspective. So kudos.
Hope you guys were impressed with the MYCA and Job Challenge Program report too. It was really a nice capstone of taking a look at how successful we've become over the years and making sure that our students are getting their high school diplomas and finishing their high school certifications. It's really gratifying to see that kind of growth and change.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that was something I was just so impressed with as well. Seeing the timeline of when the program started and being at 30% of the graduates getting their diploma to now being over 90%. I think that's impressive and in and of itself and quite a coup on our part. Way to go, Marshall Public Schools.
And I got to say the philosophy behind the MYCA with the National Guard and the cadre has changed immensely about giving kids plenty of opportunity to work in and out of the classroom on their credit recovery and their credit work. And I really appreciate the partnership that we have with them.
So Randy, I'm thinking back to the last time the board took a visit over there, and obviously we got to wait for conditions to change, but it would be nice to have the board members visit again like we did. I think Lisa and I might be the last two that were part of that visit, but that's a great program. I'm sorry I interrupted you, Lisa.
No, that's okay. I totally agree with your comment there, Richard. It's for those people who don't know anything about it or have never been there, it's just eye-opening, and it's great to see. And just for the record, that report said that there was 100 cadre that graduated from MYCA with 89 diplomas. So I think that's a great record to put out there. And then also for the opportunity to high school to have 5 who graduated and 11 from the early college with all A's. So that's pretty impressive. So
Yeah.
especially during these times, I think that just needs to be acknowledged and say good job.
All right, anybody have anything else? All right, next on the agenda is item 6, discussion. A is facility needs assessment updates, prioritizing February 15th, 2021 special board meeting. Randy?
Yeah, so thank you all for participating in those forums. You guys did a great job with that. I know it was a lot of information sharing, but the results coming out of this surveys of the participants has really been helpful. We've finished our 4th one on Saturday, and we're compiling, I'm already seeing the results coming back. We're compiling that information. We're going to make available for you the minutes of those sessions. You're going to get the ratings on the different buckets of projects that are out there for the public to consider. You also get a list of the open comments. We're going to try to analyze that a little bit, so maybe we can concise a little bit down what those comments represent or reflect. So you're going to have all of that. You're going to have the Facilities Needs Assessment Committee's recommendations in that process. And then the next couple of weeks are going to be important for us to continue to dialogue and unpack the information. I've asked David Martin to step in and talk a little bit about our pre-bond roadmap, so you get another refresher about what that looks like. We have a board session coming up on February 8th. We have another regularly scheduled session coming up on February 22nd. I'm recommending that we have a special board session dedicated completely to the bond initiative discussion on the 15th. And if you feel that you have to or would like to have another meeting, feel free to suggest it, because we're going to really need to continue to unpack this information and really feel solid about how we're moving forward. But with that, David, are you online that you can go ahead and walk us through a little bit of road mapping?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Davis. Good evening, board. Richard Compton, I would like to share a screen if I could. Let me try that.
Are you talking about this, sir?
I think Dr. Davis would want me to show the other one. Okay.
I believe you should be able to share your screen, David.
Okay. It is not giving me the option to do so, sir. Now it is. Okay, thank you. My screens are doing funny things here. Sorry. Be right with
Sure,
you.
it's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing Richard, if you could pull that document up. Sorry about that, board. So Dr. Davis asked that we provide a little just overview, and thank you, Dr. Davis, for clarification. I had the board meeting thinking that we were meeting February 22nd, but I do like your idea of the 15th being a special if the board so chooses to do that. That would be a good idea in my estimation. So we've been working continually with the forums, et cetera, and most of you have been involved in those. In the event that you should desire to move forward towards an August 2021 election, we have worked with district administration to set a meeting with Treasury. Right now, that meeting is scheduled for March 17th. And that would be so that it would align with your March 22nd board meeting. District administration, the architect, the construction manager, the financial advisor, the district's attorney. It's a pretty big meeting, about 10 people, including Treasury participants, and it's a pre-qualification meeting with Department of Treasury, where they're basically picking through the application documents that are submitted and certified by both King Scott and CSM. It is no approval comes from that meeting other than to say that every I that Treasury wants dotted and T crossed is done there in the meeting. We bring it to you then on the 22nd for an official signature by the treasurer of the board, and then submission to Treasury. Beyond that, Treasury takes a minimum of 30 days to approve that application. Again, going to the pre-qualification meeting does not mean that you are moving forward set in stone with a bond issue. Actually, you'll have until May, once you receive Treasury's approval, to call the question. So if in May, if the atmosphere says don't go towards August, we pull the plug and we tell Treasury, thanks for that meeting. It was enjoyable, and we'll use that information next time we come back. That said, working backwards from there, so starting from March 17th, working backwards, Treasury would like to have those documents in Lansing by March 11th. And at the meetings on, so you have workshops, I understand, scheduled on the 8th, potentially a meeting on the 15th, where we would act on the scope. And that's going to be probably the hardest thing to come to put in the documents to submit to Treasury. We have to have the scope identified within the documents by building, with all costs included. Those of you that haven't been through some of those and seen the bond app will be approximately 50 pages long, lots of numbers, lots of boring information, but really important information in the eyes of Treasury and in the eyes of what you'll be putting forth to them. That said, the information needs to include whatever scope and the associated dollars that you would decide to put in that bond election if you so choose. Additionally, at that meeting, then the district administration would be there working with your legal counsel, and you would actually craft the ballot language, which then gets inserted into the document. Treasury wants to make sure that you understand every number in the document. and that you understand where those numbers came from, et cetera. So it's a highly reviewed document, quite detailed, but all put together by the consultants, brought to you for official authorization to submit. That's what I would really like to suggest as one of the items that you would be looking at your meeting on the 15th, is deciding upon the scope as number one. Number two would be authorizing CSM and King Scott to start to prepare those documents and then submit to Treasury. So that's kind of what that document shows that I'm not able to show you right now. I apologize for that. But it broke the planning session down into 4 parts. Facility needs assessment. I know you're all very familiar with that. Create a shared vision. We've been working with the community members trying to understand and gather input. Identify the right project is step number 3, and we're well within the throes of that effort right now, refining the options, coming up with the items that would be included. And then the 4th item is actually Treasury. It's engage the voters. Going to the Treasury process, the bond application approval campaign, and then election day set for August. Questions so far? So it's my hopes to have as much information as we have available to you within the next week or so regarding all of the community forums, surveys, as Dr. Davis was indicating. And then we have the hard part of sorting through all of that information and making the final decision, go or no go. And if we go, what's included within the scope. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah. As I suggested, David, I'd like to see us put together a folder or a booklet for each of the board members with all that information tabbed out so they know that they're all on the same page with that information. I'd like to try to get that together between now and even next Monday, if at all possible, but let's do what we can. I know we're getting the results from the last open forum, and I think that those results will all be compiled and ready to go. So just a matter of putting those together for everybody and getting those in their hands. When according to this, after March 22nd, is March 20, so the board doesn't make the call for the election until May, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
But
And you actually, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Is the ballot language have to be approved for Treasury, did you say, or is that not approved until May?
The ballot language is set in the application, which then goes to Treasury and gets approval. It doesn't go out to the county clerk until 70 days before the election, which is the May. So it doesn't end up being on the ballot until you approve to submit in May.
Gotcha.
It's established in March because it's a part of the Treasury review.
Okay.
And that cannot be changed between March and May when we would potentially call the election?
That would be correct. Yes, ma'am.
So there's going to be some pieces. I mean, if obviously we haven't made any decisions yet, but if we choose an new Albion Elementary, the language is going to, or can be sufficiently broad enough that the location is not included in that language, right?
Yes. The one thing that it will, because you have to identify the new building per se, it doesn't have to say location or anything. It will just say create a new elementary. As long as it's within the district, it could be wherever you choose, and we still have plenty of time to work through the discussions with the college. Good question. Thank you.
Do you think we'll get the feasibility study on those locations between now and the 15th of February?
I am going to mostly the college folks are working on that, Randy. We've been putting together kind of the program for what we would need to have on site on a new elementary building. Should it be located within a city kind of area. So looking at that, trying to fit the building, looking at multiple stories, playground, some of those kind of things, and discussing ideas with them regarding where does bus drop off and pick up occur, where is parking for visitors and things like that. And so envision that it could be, a couple blocks of area necessary, not everything being on the same block as the building. But we're still studying that. We're hoping to have that information. I think February 1st is a meeting with the college, and so the college's architects, we're putting that information together towards that effort.
Okay. Richard, Shauna, when do we have that next scheduled meeting with Dr. Johnson?
Is that the one on the first? I'm looking here.
I don't know why I thought it was the 8th, but I literally could have made that up.
Yeah. You might be right. Yeah.
So while you're looking that up, so
The
for
fourth.
our scheduled our special bond meeting, I'm assuming it would be helpful to tell you, Randy, what information we'd like to have if there are missing pieces that we need in order to better understand or make a decision on the bond, then we should tell you what we would like to have so you can have that ready for us in February.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you get the, I keep on saying the binder that gives you a lot of the information we've gleaned to date, Amanda, if there's anything glaring that you're missing or need to have backup, let us know right away and we'll make sure that gets into everybody's binder.
And I think you had mentioned on Saturday that you were planning to send out the survey to parents?
Yes.
Or a survey to parents?
Yep.
And will we have that by the 15th?
Yes. That could be a quick turnaround. That's going to be a quick, sharp, give us your top priority projects that you think are important for the district kind of thing. Mark's already got the survey. Amanda's just hasn't been distributed yet.
Okay.
And I guess, Randy, just personally as one of 7, when we have this special meeting, I don't think there's any need. We've now sat through 4 of these meetings where all this has been talked about. I mean, I think the board's been very involved. I mean, I really want to hear from the other board members what they support, what they would like to see, and us build a consensus on what that looks like. I mean, obviously this is a bunch of good information, so I'm not thinking an hour presentation to start with. I'm thinking a few minutes and then let's get into discussion if that's okay with everybody.
No, I think that's perfect because we've shared the information out. It's a matter of you guys digesting that from what the materials we give you. And like you said, we need to take every advantage of the minutes we have together on that meeting to talk about how everybody feels about it.
Yeah, like I said, if there's something that's missing, then, to the board members, let Randy know so we can get that, but let's have a good discussion about it. Okay.
And
All right.
that
sorry,
meeting you're talking about the one on the 8th or the one on the 22nd?
15th, we're looking for a special board meeting, Shauna, to call.
Okay, that's what I thought, but then I heard different dates and so I changed it. So the 15th is the day that we're looking at actually talking about the needs assessment ideas.
The scope, yep.
Okay, and so what happens if, let's say we don't get more information than what we have right now. There seems to be a consensus on how money is going to be best spent for the Albion buildings, which is a new one. But what do we do if we don't have a clear consensus on what's going to be done with the Marshall buildings? by that time? Like if we don't have any more input, then, you know, the 45 surveys that we have, what do we do at that point? Or what are we going to do between now and then to decide like this is a good number of feedback? Like how do we do that part?
So the surveys that go out to the parents with children in the district is going to be significant for them to give us some feedback as well. That'll be something new you haven't seen yet. And then I think when we have in the board session on the 8th, which is a work session, we can have a sizable chunk of that time on bond discussion as well. I would like to have, as we start looking at what are the priorities, and as you've seen, you know, pretty much it's consistent of the top 5 that people are looking at, but there's other things that we need to consider throughout the rest of those projects. We need to hear from folks about that. Like I'd like to hear a little bit more from either Dan Cudens or the athletic boosters, so they can come in and talk about athletics and why that's critically important in the way, in their perspective, or auxiliary gym, or a discussion about Hughes Elementary, and is that really something we want to go forward with, or is there a different plan now in place? You know, those kind of things. I think we need to bring more of that voice into the discussion with the board.
And I
Randy,
get, oh, go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say, do you know when that survey to parents is tentatively scheduled to go out? Because for me, that's a huge part of this, is to see what the community thinks. We've had the forums and
Yeah, we can put that out tomorrow. I'm sorry, Lisa, I can't hear you.
I think she stopped talking. I was just, Shauna, just from my perspective too. I mean, this is where it's really important to me what the other board members have to say, because we tap into a lot of different pieces of the community, and so I'm sure, as I have, that we've all been hearing different things, and so I think the pieces Randy's talking about are good, but then, you know, for us to have that discussion is really important. All right, any other comments? All right, are we ready to move on?
Sure.
Next is the 6B is equity audit.
Thank you, David Martin, for being here for that meeting. Appreciate it. Thanks, Todd, for being on board. Appreciate it. Rob. Equity audit. Yep. So in your packet, I gave you a Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium equity audit for schools. I'm researching a lot of these different things. I like this this audit only because it would be really helpful for my leadership team to go through a process like this to start getting their arms around the concept behind an audit, to understand how we need to look at things like curriculum and space and climate and those types of things through an equity lens. But I'm going to be recommending, as we go in our workshop, when we talk about strategic planning, the issue about diversity, equity, and inclusion has to be a critical aspect of that. It already is the foundation behind our mission and vision statement that we've adopted and had for some time. I think it's still viable. We can in our retreat take a look at those 2 items, but we need to be able to move this forward with fidelity and I think with consistency. And I don't think it's going to happen for us to just do it internally. I think we need to get an external party that can help us work through this process. It's always helpful to have an outside view of this as we go through it, and we need to find the right partners. So I'd like to continue to investigate. I know Shauna offered something up last week for us to just look at. I know Michigan State University's done a couple equity audits, and they're not just taking this paper and going in and talking. They're actually going in and running running youth groups for getting the youth voice. Those that are especially those in minority, to be able to sit down and talk about whether they feel like they've gotten engaged and connected to our school or not. those kind of things need to happen. I think we need to have a third party to come along and do that. It is going to take some commitment financially and time as an organization to move forward with this. It needs to be a part of our strategic planning. And as I said, it needs to be long-term. We can't just do an audit and say, therefore we've arrived. We actually have to make changes and do reviews and take a look at data and find out whether or not we're actually making a difference in a positive way for our kids and our families. So I give you this as an example. I've talked to Becky and told her that we're going to have to kind of investigate what third parties could come in and do this with us, what that contract might look like, whether we should bid it out and take a look at the bids of the best providers that could do this for us and how much that's going to cost over a period of time. I can see this being at least a year of process, and then a year of study and looking at data and so forth, and then critiquing and honing that process each year. I don't know if you feel the need of it, but I certainly do. My sense of it is we've done really well in a number of ways, and yet we have a number of things that we still have to work on. My advocacy for like curriculum change, my belief that we have to really truly evaluate our cultures and get the student voice relative to their experiences in each of our buildings. Those types of things need to be there, and we need to learn from that. And I'm just hoping that when we start looking at these externals and bring them in, and we talk about our strategic planning, you guys can flesh out all your feelings and ideas about this and be supporting, in support of us moving towards trying to have a more inclusive environment for our kids.
Randy, I'm just thinking about the process for the last bond committee and the steering committee that was used, and would it make sense to have something like a steering committee here, bring in some people from the community? I mean, I'm fully supportive of this. I've not been through it before, so I don't really know what it involves at this point, but it feels like something we need to do. Would that make sense to consider something like that?
Yeah, actually, if you take a look at Harry Bonner's recently given me a list of folks that volunteered to be on the Diversity Equity Task Force. It's really nice to get thought leaders like you're talking about. Like we got thought leaders from around our total communities to talk about the bond. I think we could do the same thing with getting those folks on board as well. That could almost be like a steering committee. I don't think they're the ones that would do the work necessarily. I think obviously I'm advocating that we get a third party with experience in schools, proven track record, take a look at their accomplishments and who they work with, and try to bring somebody of expertise in here to help work with us on this.
Yeah, my guess is they're going to come in and say, okay, we don't know your district, so tell us who we need to talk to. And that's where that steering committee seems like it could be very valuable in making sure it touches the different parts. Okay. So what's the time frame on this? Or is it still under development?
Well, I think in the board retreat, we haven't scheduled that yet, Richard. In our retreat, beginning with relationship building and those types of things for us as a board and organization. And then starting to identify, looking at our mission and vision statement quickly, and see that it is about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then start putting a plan together so that I would say we should be identifying and bringing somebody on for planning this coming summer, so that we can be ready for 21-22 school year to start the process. I think that would be a legitimate plan, because it might take some time in the summer without students there to start, to put the plan together, get the strategy about how it's going to move forward, make sure we as an organization, the board, is in line with that, and then award the move forward.
All right, that sounds good. I do want to remember Dr. Johnson did also offer to assist with that. So I'm not sure what that looks like, but
yeah.
But Anybody have any comments, questions, concerns about that? All right, next is evaluation process for the superintendent. Randy?
Yeah, so last week it became apparent to me that there's a lot of confusion and probably miscommunication around this piece of information in regards to when we last talked about my evaluation process. Let me say two things. One is we brought this up in February 10th, or I did, and we took a look at policy and we discussed the responsibilities and obligations for evaluating the superintendent. There's also state law that allows us to skip a year, and in that mix of March going into the pandemic, I asked for that relief for this past year. I think it was a mistake to introduce changing the time frame on top of asking for that year to January. Although that's what MASA recommends, Becky Jones and I are on board with that because of a lot of logistics and scheduling, but the scheduling's not clear to everybody. And if we were to migrate, as we've already discussed, if we were to migrate for me to do my evaluation change from March to January or to November, December, that would either have me evaluated basically twice within a 10-month period of time, or it would have me evaluated a year and a half apart from each other. And neither one of those, depending on which side of the coin you're on, is something I think the board wants to do. So I would like to just withdraw my interest in changing it to November, December, only because we already have me scheduled to be being evaluated in March of each year. That's what we've done historically. Until a new superintendent comes in, my sense of it is that would be too much change for the district. I would just prefer to go back to the March evaluation, and I'd like to schedule my evaluation for this coming March. And then I would recommend strongly that when there's a change in superintendency, that you bring the new superintendent on board with the expectation that you evaluate them in November, December, as recommended by pretty much most of the leadership in the state in regards to good timelines for school districts to operate. Until that time, I'm fine with doing an evaluation in March of this year, in March of next year, et cetera. I just want to make sure that we clean this up a little bit. And part of that process is for Becky and I to put together a timeline, Richard, with you and the board, make sure that we're on board with what that timeline looks like. Because if you don't know, things are tied into the process that goes on with my evaluation. It's tied into also teacher negotiations, the contract. It's tied into compensation changes for our administrative team and for mine. It's tied into a number of things that Becky has to do in regards to budgeting. So at this juncture, I'd say, let's stay with what we've had. I was able to benefit from recognizing my 10 years, 11 years of highly effective by having last year be a highly effective year according to law. That was allowable, and I do that with my teachers and administrators. But I think now's the time to come back in. I know it's been so many changes this year that it makes sense for you guys to take a look at my performance in March. And we'll go for the last year from March to March, which is during the pandemic. So that should be an interesting conversation. And then we'll just stay with that until I depart from this position. And then I would strongly recommend you make that change for the next superintendent.
All right, thanks, Randy. And I think it's a very good idea to get the schedule down so it makes sense to everybody, and obviously the board members understand what we're doing and when. Does anybody have any comments, questions, concerns?
So I read somewhere, and because I'm trying to get up to speed as well. I read somewhere that in February, the board, under the consent agenda, agreed to conduct the evaluation by December 31st of this year. So I'm not sure what we want to do, but I feel like we're a little bit behind, and perhaps we need to address that. And then perhaps maybe at our retreat or something like that, we can have a further discussion about any other changes we want to make to the, the evaluation structure for Randy, with Randy.
Yeah, and Amanda, I read that as well, and it was consistent with what I was thinking last year, as we were going to do it by the end of the year last year. But I think at this point, my thought is that we just need to fix this going forward. I think going back to what Randy's proposing does that. And frankly, we're at the end of January and we're going to be in March quickly. And then I would completely agree with you that in the board retreat, we need to have a discussion. Now, first of all, and Randy and I've had this discussion, we need to be able to tie in the evaluation to a strategic plan, to us setting direction for what we would like to see him do. We've done some of that in the past, and I'm thinking from board comments that we're going to do more of that going forward. But that's got to come from us doing our kind of supervision role that then rolls into what was put in his evaluation. So I guess Randy, that's kind of what we were talking about this afternoon, and kind of to have more conversation what that looks like going forward. Was that kind of your thought as well?
Yep, absolutely.
Amanda, does that answer your concern, or maybe not completely?
Yeah,
Amanda?
it's a start. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've had conversations, and I think that, that board decision back on the consent agenda in February and the way we're going to do it. And then I think with COVID in March and everyone leaving and getting school started and then leaving again in November, having to send everybody home again, it's my opinion that I don't think that was an intentional oversight. I think it just kind of happened, and now we have the opportunity to fix it. And so I agree that we're going to get this done, move back to this schedule for the time being until we can get together as a group to talk about the schedule and how to make things a little bit more consistent moving forward, not only for the superintendent evaluation, but for all the other things that are tied either before it or after it. So it can just be very consistent and more on a better schedule going forward. But let's just get this done in March this year and move forward from there.
All right, any other comments, concerns? All right.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
And I'm not sure. It's probably just a clarifying question. So I think what I heard, what I remember us discussing last year, and then also what I just heard was that part of the reason why we were talking about moving the evaluation to November had to do with like the teacher compensation and things getting done. And then that's when we would look at the superintendent, because obviously they had to do their evaluations and get their things done. And then we would come back around to like the CEO to see, what we were going to do based on what the information that we got from the teachers and then the administrators. So, but I thought I just heard that the administrators is tied to the superintendent.
It's a matter of, Becky, what would be your explanation on that practice? It's a matter of having the superintendent's compensation determined that there is going to be change, and then making sure that we're applying that with our administrators relative to what the teachers have received as far as an increase.
Yes, so historically, the district has always operated off a Me Too clause. And we have always, I think with this year, how it kind of got a little bit jumbled up is we've always sat down with the teachers, negotiated. If we did a multi-year contract with the teachers, we've never done like multi-year compensation. So we've always gone back to the table to talk about compensation and health insurance. And last time we negotiated with the teachers, we did a 2-year. So we had a 2-year compensation. So we didn't have to negotiate for the teachers this summer. And so it kind of has pushed everything back. So typically we negotiate with the teachers, and then the superintendent's evaluation is done. And then that's when we go through and we give the other administrators and directors and hourly staff that are not part of a contract group the raises. And it's just always been like that with the district. And so I think there's a couple things that happened here that kind of threw it off. Does that help? Does that answer?
Yeah, I think so. And that's just something that we can discuss moving forward as far as how we want that process to look. So we're all on the same page. If God forbid something like this were to happen again, we would know when things are supposed to be happening and how they're supposed to be happening. But this is what we're considering doing right now because of all of that other stuff.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So in order to move back to the March, we need to make a motion.
I think it might be a good idea if, because I'm requesting the board to evaluate me in March. I think it would be a good idea for you guys to canonize that in the minutes.
I think it'd be a good idea to have a record of that as well.
I think if we did it last February, I think we should to change it to the deadline before December 31st. If we're going to change it again, then I would agree. I think we need to have it be in the minutes formally. So if we ever need to refer back to it like we did this time, it's there for the record.
Thank you for the people that were pouring through the minutes today to look for those things. So do we want to just, Lisa, are you someone willing to make that motion? So we're talking about setting it for March of 2021.
Sure. I move that we move the superintendent's evaluation to March of 2021 to be completed annually in March of each future year that he is superintendent of Marshall Public Schools.
Sounds good. Motion. We have a second.
Support.
We have a motion and support. Any further discussions, questions? All right, this was a good discussion. Let's vote. Matt,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Richard, yes, Amanda,
Yes.
and Shauna.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I think that was very helpful, that discussion and that clarification. Thank you, Randy, for bringing that to us. Item 6D is risk of COVID transmission in schools, a framework for public health recommendations matrix.
Yes. So I've asked if you guys take a look at this. I'm going to give you some data that we had last week. And you can determine by plugging that into the 3 boxes above in section number 1 with the risk of COVID transmission. This is a guidance tool only. It's really not set in stone because section 3 is, or part 1 of this form is related to extracurricular and co-curricular and athletics. And we're getting more direct guidance from the health department, DHHS, and MHSAA about these things. So let's just go with, I think this is a valuable tool for us to look at and make sure that we're moving in the right direction as we consider each one of our reconfirmation months for our plan. This past week, the county positive rate for 7-day average was 8.6. The county incident per 100,000, Calhoun County per 100,000 over 14 days was 362. And our communities, our district's incident over 100,000 in 14 days was 420. So we were within, the first question they ask under number 2, part 1, number 2 is if your 7-day average is 5% to 8%, you're moderate. If you're over 8% and less than 10%, you're considered higher. And then highest is obviously the red category of really concern. We are currently, according to the 7-day average, as of last week, we were at higher. Then you go down to number 3 and it says, are you within 100 cases of the 100,000 county cases? And we are, we're 58, the variance in 58. So it says, if you're within 100 cases, you stay at the same risk level that was determined in number 2, which says we're a higher risk level. If you go down and take a look in that number 3 section, where it talks about where that lies for extracurricular and interscholastic athletics, we would be at the higher risk level of that. Higher risk level in this form says suspend all team, group competition, and group sports training, revert to individual or online training activities. You can see from Dan's responses that DHHS and MHSAA have vacillated back and forth between, emergency orders that say no face-to-face hand contact, those types of things, and they limit it. I think they're a lot more responsive to this than this form would be able to do. And I don't know if we should be doing this on a weekly basis. It just gives us a guide. But if you go down to the bottom where it says part 2 says, if you have these mitigating measures in place, you can actually go down one level. And if you don't have them in place, you have to stay at the level that you've determined way back on number 2, which talked about our 7-day average. My belief about this tool, and my colleagues do agree to this as well, is that we can meet all of those requirements in the section number 4 for mitigating measures for our K-5. And we could go down to moderate. We could be considered right now moderate risk, but our 6-12 would be considered higher risk at this point. There's no real major difference in the way we roll out our model or the way we do business in between those two. It's when you get to the highest risk level that there is a concern, and we would have to consider modifying what our overall extended learning plan looks like. This is considered to be just a roadmap for our discussion. I think it's a legitimate roadmap. I think people have vetted it and feel comfortable with it. But ultimately, we yield to our local health department, DHHS's emergency orders, and the governor's emergency orders through DHHS and also MHSAA. So the bottom line is, it's good to back up our recommendations. It's good for you to see where we're at. Kind of gives us a little solace in knowing that we're in line and in the ballpark. But I don't think I'd take it verbatim. I think it should be adopted as a roadmap. And that's what you're going to be asked to do in the action item coming up, is to adopt this as a framework. And that way we're all on the same page with it. When the data comes out, I send to you every Wednesday. I get new data for our local district. I can send that out to you and you guys can determine for yourselves.
All right, thank you, Randy. Any questions? Concerns? All right, so the next action item, as Randy stated, is adopt. Item 7A is adopt risk of COVID transmission in schools, a framework for public health recommendations matrix. I guess, Randy, is there anything else you want to say at this point?
No, just my recommendation that we do adopt it as a roadmap.
All right, based on Randy's recommendation, I would entertain a motion to approve the matrix as presented.
Moved.
Motion by Larry, a second.
Support.
Second by Amanda. A motion and a second. Any further discussions, question or comments?
I just have one question. Randy, down in part 2, number 4, you said that question number 2, does your school have all these mitigation measures in place? And you said that that was true for K through 5. Can you clarify that? K through 5, K through 8, or K through 12?
Yes. So when talking to the health department, they said our symptom screening for staff and for students is appropriate because we're asking parents to mitigate that, monitor that, and report it. So that was a good one. It's the question about cohorting, Lisa. It's whether or not we can maintain strong cohorting between groups at the high school level when they're sharing multiple classes during the day. All the other mitigation we do as far as social distancing, mask, hand washing, managing the flow of students in the hallway on a one-way basis, supervising and managing social distancing during lunch. All of those things are done, except I can't guarantee that cohorting is being done. We are keeping record of when students are mixing in other groups because of those classes. So if we have to do contact tracing, we can do a good job with that, but I can't guarantee that we're cohorting. In the K-5, it's a lot easier to cohort because it's one teacher pretty much teaching the students, and the specials subject area teachers come into that classroom. So we are much stronger in meeting every one of those criteria at the elementary level than we are at the secondary level.
So the cohorts have to come from changing classes, not due to the cohorts going to school on Monday, Tuesday versus Thursday, Friday.
No, it's actually cohorting even to the classroom level is really what they're asking for.
Okay.
And yeah, and the other thing is it says here 3 to 6 feet. We have elected to take the strongest recommendation from the state to maintain 6 feet. And we've been able to work on that and do that pretty well. At some point, we could consider that 3 to 6 feet, but right now, not where our COVID situation is for our county or even for our state. I would not recommend us making that change in the extended learning plan yet. I pretty much feel like these are the standards we'll be operating with through the rest of the year, even with the vaccination piece.
Thank you.
All
And
right.
I also have one quick question. Well, really, it's also clarifying. I think when we talked about this the first time, if I'm not mistaken, we discussed that we can sort of use the metric by building, didn't we? Like if that need came up to where there was like a serious issue in one building, we could go through the metrics to say this building might have to be all virtual, but this building might not.
We can make decisions. I don't think we said we would use the matrix applied to a building by building, Shauna, because this is district-wide. But we do make decisions building by building based on the increase in probable or confirmed cases, based on contact tracing, based on the number of staff that could be affected, all of those types of things. We can make a decision building by building. Case in point, Harrington.
Right. I just wanted to make that clear because I do remember having that discussion. And also, like Lisa was just saying, one of the things that has been clear is that most of the elementary schools haven't had as big of an issue as like the middle school and high school outside of Harrington. So I just wanted to make that part clear that we do have some autonomy when it comes to deciding when that might have to happen and when that doesn't have to happen.
Yes. And,
Okay.
and I just want to clarify too, the Harrington issue is a staff issue primarily, not a student issue. We haven't, you can see that the weekly trend indicates that we have very little positive or probable confirmed cases for students reported. Across our elementaries, actually.
All right, any further questions? All right, we have a motion and second. We'll start with Larry,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
yes, Richard, Amanda,
Yes.
Shauna,
Yes.
and Matt.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. And next we have a action item, financial budget, approve a budget adjustment. Thinking this is Becky.
Yep, I'm going to give the background. Each year,
All
school
right, go
boards
right ahead.
Each year, school boards are required to adopt budgets by June 30th. Assumptions are used when projecting revenues and expenditures. It is common to change projections based on events that occurred after the budget is adopted. As a result, we typically will recommend 2 to 3 budget adjustments. This will be the first budget adjustment since adoption of the original budget. It is a recommendation of the superintendent that action item financial budget be approved as presented. And if we could get my budget adjustment on the screen, I can go ahead and go over it. As you can see, there's 4 columns. The first column is 19-20 actual. Second column is the original budget for this year, change column, and then the amended budget. So I'm going to kind of just go down. I emailed you guys over my rough notes. I figured it was good for you guys to go over it first and take a look at it. So as you can see, we're having a change in local revenue. It went up, even though we are going to see some losses in local revenue due to some COVID events with athletics. So we're looking at about $55,000 less in revenue for athletics, $25,000 less for City Rec not operating out of OHS. About a $28,000 loss in rental from the facilities and the auditorium use. And we get about a $30,000 revenue sharing from the Firekeepers Board that I budgeted for. I went ahead and took that out. I'm assuming we'll get something. I just don't know what it looked like. So to be on the safe side, I took it out for this budget adjustment. And then we're looking at about a $50,000 hit on investments for just money that we have in the bank. We typically make about $70,000 a year on our cash, and it's not looking so hot this year. Local revenue, the Cronin grant gave $260,000 for the initiatives towards COVID. So that's in the local grant revenue box item there. So state revenue, just for a little back date, when we did the budget, we did take the proration of the $7,411 per pupil. The state continued to keep schools flat, so we are getting the $8,111 per pupil. We budgeted a student count of 2,775, and right now we're looking at a blended count of 2,732. So we obviously budgeted very conservative in our first budget that we did and took to the board. So we do see some revenue upticks within the state there. There's an increase in ORS for the 147C of $195,000 in revenue. That's also an expense that comes out. So the 147C is an in and out right out of the district. They funnel the money in and we pay it right back out to ORS. And then we had an increase in 11D, which is a shortfall reduction of $177,000. Federal revenues, those are up. Federal revenue is an increase of $1.9 million, and that is for the COVID costs, the CARES. We get about $898 in CARES dollars and about $1 million in the COVID-19 relief fund. And then we had another $567,000 in title dollars from our consolidated app. We had some carryover and items like that. County revenue. The district's no longer providing GSRP. We outsource that GSRP, so that's a revenue and an expense reduction. Those were initially in our budget to begin with. And we have additional dollars in special education expense because that went up. We hired a couple additional teachers for virtual. And then we have additional dollars of $85,000 with the mental health specialist. The ISC is paying for a portion of those expenses for the district. So basically that covers the changes within our revenues. Basic programming, we had a big increase of about $808,000. We hired 10 virtual teachers to run the virtual program, K-5. There was $392,000 taken out of basic programming for GSRP. And then we added $144,000 in federal funds for summer school. And the summer school program right now, it's supposed to be run out of Harrington, and we had enough to open up one at Hughes. So more information to follow on that, but those dollars are within the budget for those programs. Again, expenses were added into added needs for the virtual special education teacher, and then addition of Title I dollars went in there. People support, we had addition of the mental health specialist and the school nurse. And then instructional staff services, that's a huge increase. Those are basically where our COVID dollars are sitting for a big lump of the expenses for that. Not big changes within general administration and school administration or the business. There was a little bit of the interest expense on there for our state aid note. Operations and maintenance, we had additional dollars in there for PPE supplies, and then we hired another maintenance person. So the maintenance staff is operating with 4 plus Brad, our supervisor. Pupil transportation has pretty much stayed the same. I was able to take some money off in fuel because our buses haven't been running as much. And we did hire a part-time assistant director. And then central support services is an addition of a new part-time help desk position, which was a new desk position this year. The person started about a month ago, and things have been working out really well. And then we have a new tech director, and we kept our old tech director on part-time. So there's some additional supports within the technology department there. Community rec, that is pretty much our Shamrock Center. And I wanted to make a note under central support services. We asked for the board to approve the server, the $50,000 in server costs, and we were able to get that with some of our grant funds. So we were able to purchase that. So that's in there. So right now we're looking at expenditures over revenue of about 1.8. So. Anybody got any questions?
Thank you, Becky. Thank you for providing information beforehand. It's appreciated. Amanda, go ahead.
I don't have any questions. I just want to say thank you for a person that is, I like to see the numbers and I like to see how the sausage is made. It was nice to see the spreadsheet of the changes and the additions and the subtractions and what goes into those great big lumps of millions of dollars. So thank you for providing that ahead of time.
You're welcome.
I was thinking she might quite possibly have had your prior comments in mind when she did that, Amanda.
Probably.
Any other comments, questions, concerns? Flipping through. All right, we have a motion, or we have a request for a financial budget amendment. Recommendation from the superintendent to be approved as presented. Entertain a motion to approve it as presented.
So moved.
Matthew?
Support.
I heard a couple supports. Larry?
Larry got it.
Okay. All right. The motion and support. Any other discussion? All right. We will start with Lisa.
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Richard, yes. Amanda?
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
And Larry?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. And number 9 is action item financial technology. Becky, are you going to handle this as well?
Yeah, I can. It's approved the purchase of equipment and services for the wireless refresh project E-rate. So the background, the district has several older wireless access points that need to be replaced. E-rate Category 2 funding can be used to purchase and install access points, routers, switch hubs, and wiring. The technology director has identified 111 wireless access points across our campuses that need to be refreshed. An RFP was released to the public for 30 days. 2 vendors responded. Raymond was disqualified due to an incomplete bid submission. Moss was the other vendor. Their total bid was $79,387.49. If Moss is awarded the project and once E-rate funding is leveraged, the total cost for MPS will be responsible for approximately 20% of the cost, which is $15,877.50. It is the recommendation of the superintendent that action item financial technology be approved as presented.
I guess I'll just ask, with there only being one bid that was responsive, you feel comfortable recommending that one bid?
Yes, they do a majority of our work. They're a good reputable company, and yeah.
I move approval of the recommendation.
We have a motion. Do we have a support?
Support.
All right, motion and support. Any other questions or comments, discussion?
Becky, can you remind me what the E-rate funding is?
Those are federal dollars that that the districts can go ahead and can leverage. I don't know if Richard has a better explanation for it to help assist with upgrades towards this type of stuff. We actually we outsource it. We have somebody kind of watch those dollars and come and tell us what's available to us. It's a little on the complicated side. So our rep comes and they tell us, you know, you have these funds available for you, and that's
It's
pretty
just
much how
free
we do
money. If we use it appropriately, we can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you'd like me to, I could explain just a little bit more. The E-rate funding is basically the universal service charge. If you see on phone bills and I think cell phone bills, things like that, there's a portion of that that all consumers pay. And then you can, as Becky described, apply for usage of those funds. It goes into an algorithm based on your free and reduced lunch count, which goes into another algorithm. It is as she described, a very complicated process, and districts typically use E-rate consultants to help navigate that process.
Looks like a good gig to me. It's a $80,000 project we're getting for about 15, 16 grand. So that's good upgrade. Good find, Richard. Or whoever was behind that.
Yeah, well done. All right, any other comments?
I just have a question. So with these new wireless access points, does that mean that students and teachers, like, they'll get faster internet for us non-technologically advanced people? Or do they just need to be refreshed because they're getting old and outdated and it's just time? Like, will the
I can answer that.
will the teachers and students see a difference?
I believe that they will at 2 buildings in particular. To answer your question, that it's kind of both. It is time to refresh them. They are getting quite old. At the same time, in regards to the benefits, they also use older wireless technology currently, and those speeds are slower. Also, when you roam throughout the building, so say if so a lot of our buildings have been partially done. The biggest chunk for these are the middle school and the high school, and the improvement that we could see there, other than just speed, is that when you take a Chromebook from an area that has an older access point to an area that has a newer access point, the Chromebook will try to switch back and forth between the older and the newer technology. And sometimes that actually causes the Chromebook to not be connected at all, and the student can have to power it off and back on. It's kind of a pain. The new and the old don't play as well. So it's kind of a speed boost slash needs to be done slash will provide an overall better cohesive wireless network in general.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
It's like being in Detroit and your phone signal always wants to pick up the Windsor Tower in South Detroit. Just kidding.
Something like that. All right, we have a motion and a second. If there's no other comments, I'll start with Carrie.
Yes.
Richard, yes. Amanda,
Yes.
Shauna,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
and Lisa.
Yes.
And motion carries. Item 10 is financial personnel approve changes to the superintendent's contract. I'll just read, the Personnel Committee met in open session on January 22nd, 2021 and discussed the superintendent's contract. Committee members were in favor of recommending changes to the superintendent's contract as presented. And again, the outgoing president appointed myself and Larry and Lisa to that committee. And we met on Friday, and it's our recommendation that we adopt a 4.5% increase for the superintendent's contract. And again, this is wrapped into, to some degree, it's wrapped into what went on last year with the evaluation. And this is retroactive. My understanding is back to July 1st of 2021 or 2020. And it will then continue through June 30th of 2021. And as part of doing Randy's evaluation in March, we will have another conversation based on that, what will happen on July 1st of 2021 and going forward. So this is a little bit of a catch up from last year. It's a timing issue, and I think it was COVID, kind of a communication thing, but this is something we need to get taken care of. And I guess from the three committee members unanimously supported this. So I guess at this point, for discussion purposes, I would entertain a motion to approve it as presented.
I move to support.
I have a motion to second.
I have a
All
second.
right. All right. A motion and a second. Any comments, any concerns, any questions? And Becky,
So I just want to
go ahead.
make one comment, is that I understand the why, and so I get that, but for me, it's a matter of process. And not that it's, nobody is deserving, Randy has done a great job with all of the craziness that we've gone through over the past year. For me, it's a matter of process, and no evaluation has been done. And I feel like an evaluation should be done before we recommend any compensation increases. So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, and I am confident at this point we're going to get the process going forward correctly. I think that my feeling of looking at the minutes and talking with the board members and talking with Randy is I don't think anybody intended to do anything as far as not doing it correctly, but there definitely was some confusion within the board members about what exactly we were doing. So again, I feel like we're going to correct that going forward. And part of this is to be able to have a process that the board members all understand and we're on the same page with the superintendent. But again, I think that's a valid point, Amanda.
And
Anybody have any other comments?
Yeah, and for my input, I think it seems like we're doing this before the March evaluation, but we're actually getting caught up to what we should have taken care of last year. So it may seem like it's before the 2021 eval, but it's actually to take care of the year previously. So going forward, we're going to get the evaluation done in March and then do compensation afterwards, which is what we usually do. 2020 was just a messed up year, so it just seems a little backwards.
Yes, well said. All right, any other comments?
I guess I would
Oh,
say,
yeah.
you
Oops, go ahead.
better get rid of these filters on the Zoom call, or you guys are going to be entertained. I just discovered those. I would say, the fact of the matter is, whether right, wrong, or not, the way the school has operated has been to tie the funding of the raises to what happens with the superintendent, at least with the administrative staff. And, I understand completely where you're coming from, Amanda, and I'm certainly hopeful that we're going to have this licked going forward. But it is a good time to take care of those people who have been waiting patiently, or maybe not, to get some raises. The only question I had is, the real question was, Becky may have to help me with this, or Randy. Are these including, is this raise include their step amount? Or is this in addition to a step raise?
So the teachers,
And I'm meaning for the teachers, not for the.
yeah, so the
admin staff.
teachers, when we negotiated back a couple years ago, the increments between their step scale, they used to have a 12-step scale that was anywhere between 5 to 6% in increases. We spread the scale out to about a 15 step scale, but then we added a step 20 and a step 22. And those, on a BA scale, they were 3.5% increases. And then the MA scale was 4% increases. So when you got a step, when you went from BA1 to BA2, it was 3.5. If you went from MA1 to MA2, it was 4%. So we then negotiated this year steps plus a 1% on scale. So it took the BA scale to 4.5% increases for the teachers when they got steps. And then the MA scale went to 5% increases if teachers got steps.
So it's safe to say it is a 1% salary increase plus steps.
Correct. If you were to look at
equivalent
on the BA side of things.
Yep. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
But just
All right,
to
any other-
clarify, the teachers already got their increase, correct? This is
Yes.
about administrators and,
Yes.
okay.
It is, and I understand that. I think the salary increase we're talking about, though, is to be in alignment with that increase. That 1 plus 3.5, correct, Becky?
Yes.
I didn't mean to confuse it, thinking people to think that teachers hadn't gotten their raises in accordance with their collective bargaining agreement. I just had a feeling that this was tied to how we treat administrators and other ad staff was tied to what we do with the teachers.
And it probably wasn't people, it probably was me.
Well, no, it's a good question. I appreciate the clarification on all of it. So it's good that we can, be totally transparent with one another.
And I just want to clarify that, so I did look at the administrator contract, and obviously past practice has been established, but as far as us as the board, we are looking at increases for the superintendent and not necessarily administrators. Correct?
Correct.
That's my understanding.
Yes. Yes.
So correct me then if I'm wrong. Administrative staff, let's use you as an example, Becky, or our assisted admins, our secretaries and job positions like that. Are they getting no raise? Are you getting?
No, those that we are getting raises. So the superintendent does those contracts.
Right. So
So
they're going to
based
be
upon
equivalent. So they're going to be equivalent
the
to
Me
what we
Too.
do here.
Yeah, equivalency of the Me Too clause, steps within their contracts. Some people have steps, some people don't have steps within their contracts. So yes, there's a system.
The way we've done it is if somebody gets X percent or one unit or one group gets X percent, everybody else is going to get that.
Yes, or like
because
their
that's the Me
steps.
Too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification, definitely. All right. Any other comments, questions? All right, I will vote first. Yes. Amanda?
No.
Shauna?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
And Carrie?
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
And item 11 is policy revisions and updates, Title IX regulations, in November 2020 special update. And Randy, can you give us a background on this?
Sure. At the December 14th, 2020 combined work business session, the board discussed recommendations received from Neola for update to specific board policies. Policies are being presented tonight for board adoption. These policies have been available for public review in the superintendent's office since December 14th, 2020. It's a recommendation of the superintendent that action item policy be approved as presented.
All right, it's a recommendation of the board president that actually, hold on a second, let's go back up. Recommendation of the superintendent that action item policy be approved as represented. I entertain a motion to approve as presented.
So
Move for
moved.
approval.
Second.
Support.
Shauna wins. She gets
Think of Shauna
she gets
and
the
Matt.
motion. I'll take the support.
We'll go with that. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, no discussion. Amanda?
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
And Richard, yes. And the next item is proposed IRS closing agreement of 3% retiree health care contribution form 2848 power of attorney. Who wants to take that one?
Well, I'm going to take it, and it's kind of involved. And so I'm going to read the background. I got another sheet of paper on what I'm going to do, and I have a couple comments. So I'll read the background, and then we can go from there.
All right.
So board policy 0172 requires the district to have board approval before entering into an agreement with legal counsel. Under MIPSR's 2010 PA 75 and 2012 PA 300, Michigan public school employees who did not opt out of future right to receive retirement health benefits are required to make a 3% contribution to ORS for retiree health coverage. It has been in question whether these contributions, which are taken from an employee's compensation, are wages for federal income for FICA tax purposes. For a limited time, the IRS is allowing Michigan public schools to participate in a closing agreement that favorably resolves the tax treatment of these contributions. The IRS has indicated that the closing agreement will provide the retiree health care contributions as exempt from federal income and FICA taxes. It is the recommendation of the board president that action item financial other be approved as presented. So can I go into my discussion or?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead?
I'm going to read what I had provided to you guys in the two paragraphs just to go over it. And then I got a couple comments. ORS is facilitating the process that will allow Michigan public school districts to participate and be covered by the ORS closing agreement. To participate, a school district must satisfy two requirements. First, the school district must execute a form 2848 and deliver it to the ORS by February 5th, 2021. The The Form 2848 will authorize legal counsel for ORS to enter into the closing agreement on behalf of the school districts. Second, the IRS is requiring a $3,000 user fee for each school district that participates in the closing agreement. ORS is coordinating with MPSers to make payments on behalf of school districts as an administrative expense. This removes costs to the school districts deciding whether to participate in the closing agreement or not. The IRS closing agreement is binding on the IRS on the tax issue. If our school district participates and it is covered by the closing agreement, the IRS must treat the retiree healthcare contributions as exempt from federal income and FICA taxes and cannot later change their mind. This is beneficial for our school district because we chose not to withhold the taxes. This will prevent the IRS from challenging the tax position in the event of an audit. This closing agreement is covered and for the district until 2026. So this is kind of coming out fast and furious. Troon, who are our district's attorney, are coming up with a resolution. However, they don't have it prepared yet. Our board meeting was today. And basically, I'm looking for approval to sign the Form 2848 for this Mr. Wilkes to represent our district in the closing agreement for this ORS 3%. And basically, by signing this, Troon is having a hard time because nobody has seen the closing agreement in its entirety. So they have this letter that they had put out there that has these 3 bullet points that say, this is what the closing agreement is. If you enter into it, this is what it's going to be. So Troon is coming up with a resolution that says Marshall Public Schools is willing to enter into this agreement based upon these 3 things and these 3 things only within this letter. So, and make sure it doesn't hurt the district at all. So basically, our district has handled it right. We've always handled it right. And going into this agreement, and it will give us a certification saying Marshall Public Schools did this right. So I recommend that we go into it so that we have the certification in case the IRS ever comes back and says that they want to change their mind. It doesn't cost our district anything. The ORS is paying for it. Obviously, ORS is made up of a bunch of Michigan Public School District's funds anyways. So did we already pay for it before? Or are they gonna tag it on to us in the end later on? That's to be debatable. But I've spoken with Troon, and they are going through this. They'll come up with a resolution that we'll sign based upon the fact that the board approves us to have Mr. Wilk be our power of attorney just for this matter. You're muted, Richard.
Sorry about that. So we're basically authorizing this through this agreement for him to make a resolution consistent with these ideas, but we haven't actually seen it yet.
Well, this is the letter that they produced, the closing agreement. Nobody has seen, besides Mr. Wilk and maybe ORS, has seen the full closing agreement. And we have until February 5th to sign into this. So basically, we're going to sign a resolution that says that the district will enter into it under these 3 sections. And if anything adversely is written in the closing agreement that adversely affects our district, it's null and void.
So why didn't they let people read the agreement?
I don't know why people, I don't know, they were trying to get a hold of it. I don't know why people don't have it, why it's not public, why the whole thing's out there, why they only have a 2-page letter with it. And there's a possibility that ORS could come out and say, extend the February 5th deadline to enter in. But I don't want our district to not enter into this deadline before and not end up with a certificate. It's just shameful that we've done it right. And now we need ORS to pay $3,000 to say that we've done it right to get a certificate. There's many districts that didn't. Some that didn't withhold the that didn't withhold taxes, that withheld taxes, and so they got to change their W-2s. They got to issue all corrections on them, and we didn't handle it that way. But we have to, in order to be part of the closing agreement with the IRS, we have to allow to sign the form 2848, enter into the agreement by February 5th. ORS is going to pay the $3,000 fee, and we'll have a resolution from Troon that covers the district against anything that could be adversely affected to us.
Hey,
But does-
Becky, who's going to determine if what's adverse, if the letter comes out and something isn't right with it?
I will, and our attorneys will. So I'm working
Okay.
closely with Troon.
Okay, would it be helpful to you if we, and the rest of the board might not agree with this, but I'd be comfortable if Richard spoke on behalf of the board, if there's a time sensitivity to needing an answer on whether something is or is not deemed to be an issue for us. If we can't get together as a board, I'm comfortable with Richard and his background speaking, at least on my behalf.
Yeah, so I
guess
was going to say, I
Go
could
ahead.
keep Richard up to date as things come out for this. As I get a resolution, I can send the resolution out to the board. When I talked to the district attorney, I said, I'm going to take this to my board, and in my board meeting minutes, I'm going to say, my board is only approving this, that I signed this form based upon the 3 bullet points written in this letter. And so we're going to have board meeting minutes that say the board is allowing me to sign the form, the 2848, based upon the 3 bullet points within the closing agreement letter.
Yeah, I guess I was just trying to make the representation that if something does go sideways when you get it and we can't get the whole board together, I'm comfortable with Richard making that call.
Okay.
Becky, what are other districts doing? Like that have done what we've done in terms of withholding the money properly, and now we need this certificate. Are they signing on to this?
I had a business meeting with some folks about a week ago that were kind of going through and saying, what are people doing? What aren't people doing? We never really talked about who did what in the meeting and who didn't do what and who withheld and who didn't withhold and what people were doing. It was kind of up in the air. I can tell you that Michigan School Business Officials, who is a group that I belong to, they are recommending that districts enter into this. They sent out a blurb of it. They keep us pretty much up to par and up to speed on things. I would hate to be the 490 districts enter into this and we decide not to, of the 10 districts that don't, and then we have to turn around and our employees have to pay the taxes on it. I don't understand why we have to have a certificate to prove that we've done everything right, but this is what is coming down to us through the IRS.
And I think so I get that part. And I think my last question just is like, do we need to have a conversation, or have you had a conversation with like the Teachers Association, or, does that need to happen? I mean, I do kind of hear that it's just like, do this sort of blindly and let's try to cover ourselves. I'm just asking.
It's not going to change. It's not changing anything for our district. For anyone in our staff, we did it right. So that nobody will have to change taxes or do anything like that. I'm just asking that the board approve this so that it doesn't change for our employees. Should the IRS decide to change the way that they taxate this next year, our district is covered until 2025, 2026 as well.
It's just an insurance policy for us at this point,
Mm-hmm.
with not really any risk.
Right.
So if the motion is to authorize you to sign and to take actions consistent with Troon's recommendations. And if there's any adverse issues that do arise, that you would review those with the board president prior to making the final decision. Does that kind of language cover everything you need, Becky?
Yes, I would also add that before I sign the resolution that Troon puts together, that I'll go over it with the board president as well. I think
Okay.
that adds an extra layer.
Okay. All right, is someone willing to make that motion as we've cobbled it together?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
I'll make that motion.
Have a motion, have a second?
Support.
All right, motion support. Any further discussion? I think this is a good thing to do.
Could you just send a copy of that to us, to the rest of the board as well, too, please?
The resolution when I get one?
Yes,
Yes, absolutely.
thank you.
Yeah, I'll keep you guys up. I'll send out updated emails as it comes through. And I won't send anything over until February 5th either. So I'll wait until last minute to make sure I have all of my information.
All right, thank you, Becky.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other comments, questions, concerns? All right, start with Shauna,
Yes.
Matt,
Yep.
Larry,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Richard, yes, and Amanda.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
Yep. Last item is number 13 is public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We do not have any public comment.
All right, and number 14 is board member comments for which no action may be taken at this meeting. Any comments by board members?
Richard, could I offer one thing?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
February 15th, again, could be a special meeting. If we just get a little head nod that people can see that being an important meeting for us to have for bond discussion, we could go ahead and get that posted and move forward with it. Okay.
Are we thinking of starting at our regular starting time of 7? I'm not suggesting anything else, but that's the thought.
Unless people feel like we could start that at 6.
I just,
I like the idea of 6 if everyone can do that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, Lisa.
I said I like the idea of starting at 6 o'clock if it works for everyone's schedules.
I'm in support of 6 too, if that works for people.
So am I.
Good. Thank you.
All right, no one's saying no. All right, so we'll plan on 6.
Kimberly, you got that?
I do.
Thank you.
I see a baby. There's a baby. All right. Any other board member comments? Anybody else have anything to add?